Welcome to this virtual extraordinary meeting of the Council. Before we commence, I would like to ask everyone to join with me in a 2-minute silence as we pay tribute and remember those who have lost their lives in conflict while fighting for our freedom. Thank you. May I first remind all of you of some domestic arrangements. Please ensure that microphones are muted when you are not speaking, that you do not interrupt other speakers. Members are reminded not to use the messaging chat function during the meeting unless it is report a pecuniary, non-pecuniary interest, or to notify the chair that you wish to make a proposal. That if you are attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. Additionally, you'll be invited to speak and ask questions by the chair. Please await your turn. If members lose connection to the meeting, they must contact the Member Support Officer, Mandy Smith, as soon as possible. As this is a virtual meeting, you will not need to stand to address the chair. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed, except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the Council to have consented to being filmed. By entering this meeting, you're also consenting to being filmed by the Council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. I will now move to the agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence. Jan.
Thank you, Chair. I have received apologies for absence from Councillor Sean Dawson, Councillor Holt, Councillor Granger Howard and Councillor Maybury. All councillors have marked themselves as present apart from that in the council meeting, apart from Councillors Hurren and Councillors Lindsay. Are Councillors Hurren and Lindsay present, please?
Yes, I'm present. Apologies if I haven't.
Thank you. Councillor Hurren, are you here? No, okay, I will mark that down then. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So I don't think we need a roll call, is that correct? Thank you. I also just wanted to say that I understand Councillor Dawson is currently not well. On behalf of the Council, I would like to wish her a full recovery. Item 2, Declaration of Interest by Councillors. Under Section 31 of the Localism Act 2011, all members have been granted dispensation by the Monitoring Officer for all matters relating to the local plan. Therefore, councillors do not need to declare any interest under this item. Are there any other declarations of interest? Thank you. Item 3. BC 28. Babergh and Mid Suffolk Draft Joint Local Plan and Statement of Community Involvement Addendum. I would like to welcome Tom Barker, Assistant Director for Sustainable Communities, and Robert Hobbs, Corporate Manager for Strategic Planning, to the meeting. I would like to invite Councillor Arthey to introduce paper BC 28 and to move the recommendations in the report. Councillor Arthey.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this is our new draft joint local plan. It is supported by more evidence than we have ever had to support a local plan, and it has involved our staff in a massive amount of work. In recent months, it has presented huge challenges to meet the timetable we set in our local development scheme approved in July. Paper BC 28 refers, and I will address some key points. You will see at paragraph 1.1 and the recommendations at 3.1 and 3.2 that I'm asking you to approve the Regulation 19 pre-submission document and to submit it to the Secretary of State for an independent examination. A 6-week period on the legal compliance and soundness of the plan is proposed to run from the 12th of November to the 24th of December. At paragraph 1.3, paragraphs 4.1 to 4.3 and paragraphs 9.1 and 9.2, you will see the background stages in the plan's production, starting with the decision in 2016 to prepare a joint plan for Babergh and Mid Suffolk. In 2017, we produced our first joint local plan consultation document, seeking views on a range of options, and that received some 14,000 responses. They informed our preferred options consultation in 2019, with over 4,000 responses to consider before preparing the joint local plan you have before you today. At the same time, the extensive evidence base, you won't guess what's happened. My screen has just gone blank. I'm so sorry. We'll try again. Can you just wait? I'm just waiting for my screen to come back up. Okay. I think I've got around about the point of the extensive evidence base, have I?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, okay, so I'll start again. They informed our preferred options consultation in 2019 with over 4,000 responses to consider before preparing the joint local plan you have before you today. At the same time, the extensive evidence base referred to at paragraph 4.4 was being prepared. These documents are included in the appendices detailed at paragraph 12 and in the core document library at paragraph 13. Section 2 of BC 28 deals with the options, which are basically that you approve submission of the plan or you don't. If you choose not to submit this plan, but seek instead to reinterpret the evidence that supports it and make changes, it may well have implications as a result of the government's proposed changes to the current planning system. You will remember our debate in September and the effect the changes could have on our calculated housing need. You will also remember the transitional arrangements proposed for authorities at the stage we are at in plan making. It is important to recognise we have a window of opportunity to submit our plan based on the existing calculation of need. If we miss this window, we may well have to plan for significantly more homes. That would require a major revision of the plan with a new call for sites, new assessments, and a likely delay measured in years, not weeks or months. The plan follows the same basic format as before, with 3 main sections. Excuse me. Part 1 contains the strategic policies, Part 2 the development management policies, and Part 3 places and site allocations. I'm sure you will all have studied the plan to see how it provides for our district, our market towns, and our villages and rural settlements. And I'm sure you will have had particular regard to how it will affect your ward. The plan includes maps showing sites allocated for housing and employment, and all identified settlement boundaries. The strategic and development management policies provide the principles to guide the determination of planning applications. They seek to balance our growth requirements with the need to protect our wonderful rural landscape and rich heritage. They recognise the importance of affordable housing, employment, town centres, tourism, infrastructure, the environment, and climate change. The plan provides for 416 dwellings per year, or 7,900 dwellings by 2037. Around 4,000 of these dwellings already have permission, so the plan is allocating sites to meet the remaining need. The approach to distributing these dwellings has sought to balance growth in line with the outcomes from our 2017 and 2019 consultations. We need to maintain a land supply throughout the period of the plan, so we have included a 20% buffer as a safeguard in case some of the proposed sites don't come forward. A key element of the evidence underpinning the plan is the Infrastructure Delivery Plan, which you will have seen labelled as EH08 in the core document library. The IDP provides greater detail on infrastructure requirements than has ever been provided before, including education, health, transport, emergency services, utilities, digital connectivity, waste and community facilities, and green infrastructure. It identifies the need and sets out the funding sources, including the Community Infrastructure Levy and the timescales for delivery. We can have much greater confidence that appropriate infrastructure will support development than we have ever had before. I know there are many of you that will be particularly pleased to see the detail in some of the local policies, including LP06 and LP07 addressing supported and special needs housing, LP17 through to LP21 seeking to protect the environment, biodiversity, landscape and heritage, LP25 addressing sustainable construction and design. These, together with our strategic policies, should guide our decisions toward better developments in our district. The plan is a step forward in providing for the existing and future needs of our residents and communities. Paragraphs 410 to 414 explain the amendments required to the Statement of Community Involvement, which I am also proposing today at recommendation 3.3. Given the ongoing situation with COVID, we are having to make changes to the way we would usually make these documents available to our communities. We won't be making hard copies of the plan available in our customer service points, but it will be online, together with all the supporting documentation you have with your papers today. We can't hold drop-in sessions either, but we can do virtual events, and the team will be available to respond to all inquiries by telephone and email. At paragraphs 9.3 to 9.8, you will see the next stages if you approve the recommendations I am proposing today. They include briefings for town and parish councils and neighbourhood plan groups, and the representations being invited do not form a consultation, but they will be subsequently made available with the changes to, oh dear. It's not a consultation where we will subsequently make changes to our plan, but the representations invited will be made in writing, and if duly made, will simply be sent to the planning inspector for consideration in the examination next year. Chairman, I want to finish by thanking some of the people involved. Firstly, the staff involved. I want to thank our Chief Executive, Arthur Charvonia, for his commitment to maintaining the resources necessary and additional resources when required to enable us to deliver this plan to you on time. I also have to thank those most directly involved. Our Assistant Director for Sustainable Communities, Tom Barker, and his various teams, with a special mention for the strategic planning team, who have done so much of the detailed work, and for Phil Isbell for the extra help his planners provided when we needed it. My biggest thank you is reserved for Rob Hobbs, our Corporate Manager for Strategic Planning, who is with us tonight to answer any detailed questions you may have. Rob has been absolutely committed to producing for us an evidence-based plan of the highest quality, and has carefully and methodically put together the document you have before you today. It is a real achievement for Rob and his team, and I thank you, Rob. Finally, some of the members involved. I want to thank our council leader, John Ward, for entrusting me with the task and for supporting me throughout. I also want to thank David Byrne, the Cabinet Member for Planning at Mid Suffolk, for his commitment and shared ambition to produce a plan for both councils. We have worked together with the Joint Local Plan Member Working Group to assess and review the developing plan in accordance with the evidence base and taking into account the representations received following last year's consultation. So I must also thank Councillors Beer, Busby and Jameson from Babergh, and Councillors Guthrie, Field and Stringer from Mid Suffolk. Sometimes it took a while to arrive at a position we could accept, but I don't feel alone in presenting this plan to you. I am doing it on behalf of the member working group. Chairman, I am proposing the 3 recommendations in paper BC 28 at paragraph 3. That is approval of the JLP pre-submission document, authority to submit to the Secretary of State for an examination, and approval of the Statement of Community Involvement. Chairman and members, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Councillor Arthey, for that very detailed proposal. That was very helpful. Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please?
Yes, Chairman, I'd like to second this. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Fine. We'll now move to questions and debate. Councillors may ask as many questions as they wish. However, they must be relevant to the subject under discussion and must be a question. When we get to the debate element, councillors will only be allowed to speak once for 3 minutes, and this will be timed. Would anyone like to start the debate? Is that John Hinton? John, would you like to open the debate, please, John?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I've got some questions, first of all, on the proposals in front of us. And I'm sure that Mr. Hobbs can answer them quite succinctly. But where we've got the page 22, where we have the duty to cooperate, it says Suffolk County Council will engage. Well, where is Suffolk County Council's plan? This is Babergh District Council's plan to create houses. Where is the parallel Suffolk County Council plan to create the infrastructure and transport links necessary to facilitate those houses? That's my first question. I'd like to reserve the rest until he's had an answer to that.
Councillor Arthey, did you want to answer that, or would you prefer to refer it on?
I'm just looking at my papers here. So if I can, if Rob's with us, if he's ready to start answering that, and I'll just refer back to the papers. Rob, are you available to answer that?
Yes, Chair and Councillor Arthey. So effectively, Suffolk County Council are a key partner of ours in putting the plan together. We have an infrastructure delivery plan, which is very extensive, that Councillor Arthey's referred to, which Suffolk County Council are very involved in. That's linked with strategic policies set out in the plan, in policy SP08, and also in some of the local policies. And also a number of the sites have site-specific infrastructure requirements as well. And the infrastructure delivery plan provides more detail. Suffolk County Council have their own plans, be it the local transport plan, or other various documents to help guide development. So just wanted to reassure Councillor Hinton that we work extensively with Suffolk County Council in putting the appropriate evidence together that underpins this plan.
Thank you.
Councillor Hinton, does that answer your question?
Well, it gives an answer. I'm not sure whether it actually answers the question. But just to move on from there, then, if that is the case, then Suffolk County Council are involved in this, and presumably the other consultees like Highways England are involved as well. And Councillor Ward will know what I'm going to say next. How come, whereas back in 2008, Highways England said that any development of over 50 houses that accessed out onto the A12 would be required to contribute towards junction improvements, do we now have sort of 220 odd houses being built in my village, or proposed to be built in my village, and not a squeak from Highways England? And we're now, of course, 12 years further on with further pressure on the infrastructure. That's the next point in terms of the infrastructure.
Councillor Hinton, can I just ask you just to clarify that part of your question about 50 houses or more being built and accessing onto the A12, I think you said, did you?
Yes, that was stated at a public meeting that was held in Stratford St Mary when they were talking about proposals to close off the Higham crossover, and also the route-based strategy was being put forward.
Okay, and who said that?
Highways England, or Highways Agency as they were in those days.
Okay, great. I'm not aware of that. Rob, do you know anything about that statement?
Not particularly about the statement, but we do engage with Highways England as well as a statutory consultee. We have been working closely with them and Suffolk County Council in preparing this plan, and we will be publishing a statement of common ground alongside the plan if it is approved at Council tonight and at Mid Suffolk tomorrow. In terms of other matters, Councillor Hinton refers to development in East Babergh in particular, and a number of those sites already have planning permission, and Highways England are a statutory consultee on any planning application of a significant scale as well.
Yes, I think probably what I'm trying to sort of get to the bottom of, and trying to get some sort of consistency if this is going to be a workable plan, and that is that if the Highways England are saying, or Highways Agency at one point are saying 50 homes you've got to improve the junctions, and are now saying 140 homes you don't have to do the junctions, they're getting just as inconsistent as county highways, who say we will make gateways at the entrances to villages to slow down the traffic going through them, and then turn around and say, well, if we create an open aspect, that will slow down the traffic. So it's trying to get some sort of consistency to the statutory consultees' responses, which we can't go against when we're talking about planning applications. But to move on from that for the moment, because I don't suppose you can answer in any detail for those two agencies, But on page 262, where we're talking about the two developments within East Bergholt, all of a sudden within the policy concerning those sites, and Moores Lane, which is LA 060, has already been granted permission, and LA 061 has got outline permission. It suddenly says, as it does on quite a few of the allocated sites across the district, I've checked on some of them, not all, but some of them, it says, and I quote, developer should test the potential resources on the site to identify if prior extraction or use of the minerals on the site is appropriate. Well, if that means sort of sand and gravel, does that mean that it is part of the Suffolk County Council's mineral extraction plan? Or does it mean that they can dig a bloody great big hole, excuse my French, and fill it up with rubbish before putting the houses back on it? You know, it does rather sort of leave things wide open to interpretation by people who won't necessarily have the interests of the community at heart.
Okay, Councillor Hinton, I don't think it means either of those things, but Rob, can you just explain why those paragraphs are in there?
Yeah, as I alluded to earlier, Suffolk County Council worked closely with us on producing the plan, and one of the areas they cover obviously is minerals, and so that sentence has effectively come from a comment made by them to effectively see if prior extraction or use of mineral on site is appropriate. So that's where that would have come from.
But how does that equate with then developing the site with houses if you've then got a dirty great big hole to start off with?
Are you expecting an answer to that, Councillor Hinton?
Well, it was phrased as an answer. How does that equate with developing the site if there's a dirty great big hole to start off with? It seems rather like we put something in as a catch-all to try and assuage somebody's concerns over mineral extraction, but all we're really doing is creating a fug of misinformation for people to use.
Okay, but I mean, let's be clear that these are housing allocations. They're not sites for mineral extraction.
Then why does it talk about using the minerals?
Well, if you look at the top of both of those allocations, it talks about the provision of housing.
Yes, but it then talks about mineral extraction. Are we supposed to say that those are the paragraphs are in the correct order, and you've got to comply with paragraph 1 before you can move on to paragraph 2 and down the list? I don't think it means that.
No, it doesn't say that. Rob, I'm going to come back to you if I can. I mean, I don't know if there's very much else that you can say, but you've heard what Councillor Hinton's follow-up questions are. Have you got any other comment to make on it?
Can I just say that one comment I just want to make is you quantify the minerals that are on site and then try to reuse them if you can on site as part of the building materials. But yeah, that's all I'm going to say at this point.
Okay, I'd like to move on now, if I may, to the next question. Councillor Jan Osborne, have you got a question, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Can I just say, first of all, very much appreciate the hard work and the commitment from both members and officers to get the local plan to this stage, and I shall be supporting the recommendations. The old Prologue site and the 4.4 acres at the back of the health centre in Churchfield Road, Sudbury, is not allocated as employment site in the new plan. However, I have been assured that a review of employment land in Babergh, including Sudbury, will be done following on from the approval to this plan. My question is, policy SP05 identifies Churchfield Road, Sudbury as protected employment land. Does this include the old Prologue site and the land at the back of the health centre? So could this be clarified for me, please? Either Rob or Councillor Arthey. Thank you.
I'll try and answer it for you while Rob is thinking about his answer. No, it doesn't. The site there has been subject to the same scrutiny and assessment, as all other potential employment sites. It's a need-based assessment, and I think Councillor Osborne was aware of the fact, because it was in our preferred options, that this site could potentially be removed from the employment allocations. She's obviously aware of the fact that there's a current planning application for the site as well, for housing. The site is not allocated for either employment or housing in the current plan. Obviously, people can make representations that will be forwarded on to the inspector if they want it to be considered at the examination next year. And I suggest that if she believes this site should be included as an employment allocation, that's the route she ought to take. Rob, can you add anything?
Can I come in?
Well, yes.
Sorry, can I come in on a second one on that? So on the policy SP05, Councillor Arthur, where it's got Sudbury Churchfield Road, that excludes the prologue site, does it, and the land at the back of the health centre?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about excluding it. It doesn't include it.
Okay, thank you.
Rob, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Not really, Councillor Arthur. I'd just say that there are also policies maps in the place section of the plan if anyone's got any concerns or wants clarification on where lines go around sites.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Melanie Barrett, please. Have you got a question?
Yes, thank you, Lady Chairman. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to raise a point of interest. On page 29 of the plan, there is a table showing housing mix and tenure, showing the percentage of houses, dwellings split by 1, 2, 3 and 4 or more beds. As a member of the planning committee, I'm interested. It can sometimes feel that if we are being asked to approve 4-bedded properties, it's something to be resisted. It's not needed, and that all development should be much more geared 1, 2 and 3 beds. So in fact, there seems to be a significant need for 4 beds, especially in social and affordable, as in all the tenures. And Councillor Arthur has just spoken about the evidence gathering of this this exercise in this plan. So my question is, therefore, can we expect to see more support for developments containing a mix, more 4-bedded in the future? And you know, that I'd be interested how this will pan out in the future. Because this document, as it's suggested, seeks to influence future development.
Okay, I've heard the question, but I'm not quite sure what sort of answer you're expecting, Councillor Barrett. I mean,
Are we really going to see 4-bed support?
Well, I'm looking at the table that you're referring to here. And I presume you're talking about the top of page 29, and you're talking about the shared ownership, 10%, social rent and affordable rent, 26.4%, discount home ownership and start. Well, that is the evidence. We can't control the applications that come forward, and the decision on those will be taken either by the planning officers assessing the application or by you and your colleagues at development committee. So I don't know. I don't know if I can answer anything more on that. Part of the question, I think, is probably around the evidence base that supports those figures. So, Rob, I don't know if you can help with that, can you?
Yes, the table you're referring to comes from our strategic housing market assessment, and that's focusing on the affordable need. In terms of the market housing, that's often well, that's put forward by the applicant themselves as part of a mix, and we have policies in the plan to try and ensure that overall we have a good mix of housing across all tenures and types in the development. So we wouldn't single out a particular, say, 4-bed house as what we'd be seeking to achieve, but we would expect a mix. But say this table is referring to the affordable element of that.
So, Councillor Barrett, were you surprised that the evidence showed 26% for affordable housing, social rent and affordable rent? Were you surprised by that?
Yeah, it certainly caught my eye to examine. In fact, needs, obviously I looked again at all the 10 years across that table. But yeah, thank you for that. I just wanted to say also I support this plan. I believe it's, particularly in the areas of the AONB and heritage or historic that particularly affect my ward. I've tried to examine it thoroughly on those grounds, and I think it's written positively with what we want to see rather than, what we don't want to see. So I do support it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Councillor Davis, have you got a question, please?
I do. Thank you very much. First of all, I want to commend the work that has gone into this. I attended a couple of meetings right at the beginning out of interest. It's an incredible amount of work, and as you say, Clive, a lot of to and fro and disagreement, but finally agreement. My question actually comes from a developer I was speaking to today, who is also, as all developers will be, very keen to see the JLP come forward. And his question is basically, how robust is it, given how the government constantly changes the goalposts in terms of development, in what they demand and what they expect from all planning authorities? How robust do you see this, Clive?
Well, it's our new plan. It's fully compliant. It's up to date. As I said earlier, it's the most evidence that's ever supported one of our plans. So if the question is how robust do I think it is, obviously it's got to go through examination and on to adoption. But I've been on the council for nearly 30 years now, and seen a few local plans go through council. And I have to say that this is the most evidence-based. It is the best plan that we've ever had. It provides for our future better than any plan has ever done before. So I think it's the very best that we can have moving forward. In that regard, I think it will be very robust. The only caveat to that, of course, is that the government does keep changing the parameters that we're working under. So we will have to wait and see what happens with regard to the changes to the current planning system, which I referred to earlier on. We'll have to wait and see what happens with the white paper, and with regard to some of the biodiversity and environmental issues. There's the Environment Bill next year as well. So what government does will have a huge impact on us. And of course, I guess the minute you adopt your plan, things have changed and you have to work on the next one or work on changes. But for this moment in time, I have to say it is, I believe, the very best plan that we can submit.
Yeah, thank you for that, Clive. I totally agree with you, and I think that will give a lot of developers and residents, because obviously they're the most important things on there, a great deal of comfort.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Hardacre, have you got a question, please?
I have a question from a bunch of residents who don't feel particularly comforted by this. I represent Ipswich Fringe, where we're getting quite a large percentage of these house allocations, but I don't want to go on about that now. I have a specific question about a specific allocation, and that is LA 116 by Sproughton on page 57 of the plan was not there in the draft plan, it has in recent years, had 2 applications for 50 houses declined by committee on the basis of the environment, traffic, but specifically the listed buildings. And since those applications have been declined, it has appeared in the plan as a site that is apparently suitable for development. So I'm curious how this has happened. Why, as a site that we're telling developers is not suitable, has the plan decided is suitable?
Okay, you're talking about one specific site, and the obvious answer to you is that if you don't agree with its inclusion, you should make your representations, which will be forwarded on to the inspector and will be given due regard. I'm not sure how much I ought to say about a particular site, but it's fair to say that we have looked at ways to address the apparent tension between our developing JLP and the committee decisions that you referred to of refusal. And I guess that gave us 2 alternatives. One was to concede on the appeal, or the other was to concede on the plan and remove the allocation. But the third way is what I think we should be doing, because it's more pure and logical, and that is that we shouldn't be doing either of those. The joint local plan addresses an area of land, but the application was a detailed proposal. So the way that I see things developing with regard to the site that you refer to is that there is an appeal ongoing. If that is dismissed, we can look at the reasons that the inspector gives, and we can ask the JLP inspector to adjust or remove the allocation in line with the views expressed by the appeal inspector. If the appeal is allowed, the JLP inspector will have to accept that the site has permission. So just going back to the question of whether we should concede on the appeal or concede on the JLP allocation, I think we obviously have to respect the decision of committee, but they don't write the JLP piecemeal. This is a document that's been prepared over a number of years, and as I've said earlier, is very firmly based on a lengthy evidence gathering period. The committee can only determine the application they have before them, and they did that. But I think that as far as the JLP is concerned, we have to also respect the evidence that supports that. So what I'm trying to say to you is I get that you're trying to say that there appears to be almost hypocrisy here, that on the one hand, committee are saying an application for housing on that site should not be allowed, and on the other hand, it still appears in our joint local plan submission document as a site that may be suitable for housing. But I hope you will accept that those apparent tensions will resolve themselves. Does that, I don't know if it answers your question, but does that give you my view on the issues you're trying to highlight?
Yes, thank you. It seems to be that, yeah, I don't know what I want to say. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Lindsay, have you got a question, please?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I need to apply my background. just to the background to my question is, of course, about an allocation in my village, Bilderston, 75 houses on land south of Watcham Road. There were a number of sites put forward around Bilderston in the call for sites some time ago. All of them, bar this, were dismissed, and all I could find out about the reasons was a sort of very short sentences produced by who I don't know, in it somewhere buried in the document. And I looked them up, and just seeing less than a sentence, like a note, isn't very convincing. And the parish council and I were of the view that the worst possible site was the one that's been allocated, and there were others that had better cause to be allocated. We accept that we have to have some, Bilderston's sort of labelled as sustainable because it has one shop. So we therefore accept it. You have to have some development. But there seemed to be no opportunity for a genuine consultation with residents about which sites were chosen to be allocated. What opportunity is there, or was there, for that to have a proper discussion about, what the village, what the residents thought was the best site? Thank you.
Okay. The history goes back through the 2017 consultation, the 2019 preferred options. You had an opportunity yourself to feed into that. The sites that made it to this draft submission document went through the member group. We spent several sessions looking at the appropriateness of the various submitted sites. As far as the evidence supporting this site over any other is concerned, I don't have that to hand, and I'd be very surprised if Rob Hobbs had it to hand. But I will ask him in a minute. The thrust of your question, though, is similar to others, and that is that there's something in the plan that you might not agree with, and the answer to that concern is the same as before, which is that this, you have this opportunity to make your representations, and they will be forwarded on to the inspector and considered in the examination. But I don't know if, Rob, if you've been able to access any of the background for the Bilderston sites, have you?
If I could just say that, when sites are submitted to us, we obviously have a strategic housing and economic land availability assessment, which does an initial appraisal of sites, but they're also underpinned by various evidence-based studies detailed in our core document library, which is appended to the council report. And they've all gone through sustainability appraisal as well, those sites that are deemed suitable for development. So, yes, I just point Councillor Lindsay to the underlying evidence base in this regard.
So I think the answer is, Councillor Lindsay, you might not point to it as a suitable site for development, but the evidence base does.
Well, I've seen okay, I won't prolong this too long, but just to say, I did make my objection to this as soon as I was elected as a Babergh councillor in 2019. And the parish council did so earlier. And B, all I've seen is the appraisal of the site that was allocated, and it's basically got it's got two red marks and two positive marks, and they say on balance the positive is better than the negative. But anyway, that I don't find that very convincing, but I will raise that down the line. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is a question for Clive or Rob. Land east of Carson's Drive, Great Cornard. Can you confirm that it's not in the plan?
Are
Sorry.
you looking? Sorry, Councillor Newman, are you looking at a particular? I mean, you said, can you confirm that land isn't in the plan? I mean, are you looking at a particular plan and there's a site and you want to know whether it's included or not?
It's off Prospect Hill in Great Cornard, and there was mention of a developer wanting to put it in the plan, and obviously the parish council and Great Cornard don't want it in the plan, and the residents don't want it in the plan. I was just wondering if you've noted it anywhere.
Well, have you had a look and have you seen it?
It has been mentioned, but I don't.
Councillor Arfey, if I could just help you, it's Councillor Beer here. I think he's referring to the land south of Davison Close, Great Cornard, the Sheila site that was put in that I believe wasn't supported by buyers, by Babergh. I think Councillor Newman just wants that to be clarified that that is still the case.
Well, can we just...
Councillor Beer, would you mind coming through the chair, please?
Apologies, Madam Chairman. Yes, I just thought I was helping out.
You were, thank you.
Okay, could I just refer Councillor Newman to page 278 if he's got the document in front of him?
I can't, unfortunately, I can't get the document up at the moment. I was having trouble, so I haven't got the document at the moment. But have you got it there? Have you?
Well, yes, I've got it here, but I don't know if anybody else knows the land that you're referring to. Obviously, if you want confirmation that it's not in, we need to know exactly what you're referring to.
Does Rob know? Or?
Rob, are you aware of the land that Councillor Newman is talking about?
Yes, I was just raising my hand to come in. Yes, it's in the Strategic Housing and Economic Land Availability Assessment. It's potentially suitable for development, but that's only an evidence-based document. That doesn't allocate sites. So then sites need to be then taken forward for allocation, and then it's not in the joint local plan as an allocation. So I can confirm that. That's the question.
Oh, that's what I wanted to hear. So I will be supporting the plan, knowing that that's not in it. Thank you. Thank you, Clive.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Newman. Councillor Alistair McCraw, please. Councillor McCraw, have you a question?
I've just, the microphone Surface Pro issue, it shut itself off. I have a specific question, and I appreciate we're all going to be doing a little bit of this because we're all looking out for our own patches as opposed to the broader aspect of a local plan. On page 228, I think this addresses a difference about how the allocations are decided and strategic housing assessments are reached. Page 228 deals with an allocation in Brantham, which previous strategic housing assessments, whether they were SCHLARs or SCHMARs, apologies, have assessed at first 50 and most recently in the last version of the consultation for 30. Subsequent planning application has arrived for 128 properties on this piece of land. This piece of land that we previously assessed at 30, and our allocation now assesses this site as being worthy of approximately 125 dwellings. Quite a few people have wondered how you can move from 50 to 30. Well, those two at least are in the same, same ballpark. Suddenly to 125 approximately, which purely coincidentally matches up with 128 for an existing application. Are our judgments on a site guided by applications when they exist, or are we actually making a rational, independent assessment? I'd like to have an answer to those questions.
Okay. Well, the only time that you will find a number put in our plan that's affected by or dictated by an application is where consent already exists. So, as you know, there are quite a few sites in the plan which have already got the benefit of planning permission, and there we have probably got a good indication of the numbers. With regard to the Brantham site, I'm afraid I don't know whether there are any outstanding planning permissions on the site.
There are not.
No,
I'm telling you quite frankly, there are not.
Okay, great.
This is an existing application subsequent to the last consultation, which identified this site suitable for northern perimeter development of up to 30 dwellings. Yet the allocation has been raised to approximately 125, which seems very close to the number of 128 of this actual application.
Okay, I think I'm getting close. So I haven't got the preferred option document in front of me, but are you saying that in the preferred options document, this site was identified, but was identified for 30, and now in the submission draft, it's identified for 125?
Approximately, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. In the section 18 document, the last consultation held last year.
Yes, okay, great.
And the application was subsequent to that.
Okay, I'm sure that Rob will be able to answer that question.
Yes, thank you. Well, as part of putting the plan together, we have to ensure that it's effective. It's one of the tests of soundness that it's deliverable. So at each stage of the plan making process, well, we obviously receive representations through the various stages of consultation, which would include developers putting forward sites and their delivery assumptions. But we also have engagement with developers in terms of what delivery they expect on the site. And also, when we know that information, we undertake we've undertaken further evidence-based work since the previous round of consultation, which is all published on our website. So in answer to your question, it's a bit of both, I suppose, in terms of delivery information put forward by a site promoter doesn't mean that we necessarily take it all as read, but we certainly then, and every site goes through evidence-based work to ensure that that proposed figure can be delivered or not, and if it's appropriate. And in this case, as Councillor McCaw alludes to, the previous plan had a different site area that was proposed for allocation. Now, further evidence-based work has been undertaken, and what's being proposed now is a larger site boundary, which then equates to approximately 125 dwellings as being able to be delivered on this site.
I might just follow on that, Chair. The original allocation, a much shorter one, was an assessment we made only last year, and it just seems purely coincidental that the plan isn't being driven by an actual application rather than our strategic housing assessment. I find that a disturbing piece of work, and I believe that the parish of Brantham and the people of Brantham probably will be making a submission to the inspector that this is the wrong way round. We make the local plan, not the developers.
Okay, thanks for that. I am aware that we are talking about quite a few parochial issues, if you like. This is not really the time for every member to open a debate on the merits of sites in their ward. So I mean, I just say that because this is our draft submission document. There's been a tremendous amount of preparation go into it. And I think that if individual members on behalf of parishes or communities, or those parishes themselves, want to make individual representations, the best way to do that is, as I said earlier, to make those representations in the 6-week period, and they will be forwarded on to the inspector. Otherwise, we could end up with a debate this evening that goes through all of the villages in everybody's ward, and that could take a long time. Thank you.
Chair, may I just respond to that point?
Yes, and then I only have one more question to follow anyway.
My point was meant to be less specific to an individual site, but more to the driving of the strategic housing assessment.
Okay. Councillor Jameson, is your question very site specific, or are you planning to talk a more general question about the document?
It is site specific, but hopefully it'll just be a quick site specific. It's not. If I can just get that in.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just looking at page 328. This shows an LSO1 allocation, Lindsay Tye. Looking at the policy for LSO1, there's no mention of that within the policy. I just wondered if that's an oversight or.
No, you will find quite a lot of these in the plan. Obviously, you're familiar with the ones in your ward, but there are quite a lot of LSO1 sites. They were previously identified as extensions to the built-up area boundary. So in the preferred options, you would have seen either a new settlement boundary defined, which is what happened in a lot of villages. Lindsay, one of them, had 2 defined. And when those settlement boundaries were defined, there was due regard given to sort of potential sites within a cluster of developments. So this has occurred throughout the plan. You will see a lot of if you look at other villages, you will see quite a lot of LSO1 sites. So they're ones that some of them have already got planning permission and were included in the redrawn settlement boundaries for villages and have now been labelled as LSO1 sites. Some of them are quite small. If you have a look at the list, you'll see I think the largest is 51 in Cockfield, and that's actually one that's already got consent. So the settlement boundary was drawn around it. And I think that's the largest of the LSO1 sites, but there are a lot, and there is a schedule of them at. I might need Rob's help here. There's a schedule at. Chairman, can I just ask Rob for the page? There's a schedule.
Yes, please do.
Okay, thank you, Chair. It's 209.
209, is it? Yeah. So if Councillor Jameson looks at the schedule on 209, page 209, he will see all of the LSO1 sites.
That's what I'm saying, Councillor Arthur. Lindsay is not within that policy there, so I wondered, is that an extensive list of all the LSO1 sites, or?
Gosh, you've picked something here. I'm going to defer to Rob. I think it should be in there, but it's not, I think is the answer. Because it's an LSO1 site. And it's not in that list.
That was my question, yeah.
Rob, can you help on this?
Yeah, I'll have to have a look at that. So are we saying then it's allocated as LSO1 on the policies map and it's not shown in the schedule?
That's right.
Yes,
that's right.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the policies map is the key map showing the allocation. So as long as it's on that map, then that's okay for the plan to proceed.
Yeah, I wouldn't question it. It's just that in the policy schedule there, it details the number of dwellings. So without Lindsay in there, it's a bit, you wouldn't know how many dwellings that allocation refers to.
Tom Barker, I see you've got your hand up. Are you wanting to help on this, please?
If that's okay.
Yes, please come in.
If I could come in here, Chair.
Yes, please do.
Yes, Councillor Jameson, this appears to be an oversight, and the team will look into this. This is the kind of matter that the examination process will tidy up very easily through a minor modification where they would just be able to add into there outside of the meeting. I'll ask Rob and the team to clarify the number of dwellings that are due to be proposed there, so that yourself and the parish council and any concerned residents are able to make their comments accordingly for what they perceive is due there. And just to kind of add in on this question, I think it's an important point, which is that all of the allocations, the sort of more significant allocations, come with their own policy wording text. and the allocations within LSO1 don't come with their own specific policy wording text, but I'd just refer councillors to LP01, which is the first of the development management policies, the first of the local policies, and that policy would provide an overarching approach to all of the proposals that are shown on page 208 and within the maps as LSO1 sites. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you, Tom. Are you you're satisfied with that now, Councillor Jameson?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's great.
Thank you. Councillor Hinton, did you have a further question? Councillor Hinton, did you have you've taken your hand down now, have you?
Oh, beg your pardon. Sorry, hit the wrong button. It was really a point on what Councillor Arthey was saying just a few minutes ago. This meeting is to discuss the draft joint local plan final submission to approve it for submission for final consultation. So really, it's the only time that councillors have had to really discuss it in any detail in a formal manner. So to say that we shouldn't be talking about this, that and the other is rather sort of disingenuous.
Have you got a question, Councillor Hinton?
Well, I did say that
we're moving on to debate later. We're moving on to debate after this.
Sorry, Madam Chairman, but if I could just come to a question then, and that is to say that on page 45, where it talks about the neighbourhood plan areas and the number of properties, etc., that are proposed to be built in various areas, the fact that the outstanding planning permissions as of the 1st of April 2018 is rather disingenuous when it comes to saying what the current position of outstanding permissions is. Surely we can put a more up-to-date figure in there than a 2-year-old one.
It is more up to date than that. I don't know the exact date. Rob, have you got the exact date that existing permissions were marked up to?
I think in this response to this question, this is as of the 1st of April 2018, because that's the base date of the plan. So what that table is doing is setting a neighbourhood plan requirement for each neighbourhood plan area. Now, if some of those planning permissions have been built, then that's obviously going towards meeting that requirement.
Yeah, I thought that, Councillor Hinton, you were talking about the allocations and whether they were up to date, accepting that some of them have already been given consent and some of them have started on site. Is that what you were asking?
It's partly that, and partly because if you look at East Bergholt, my own parish, and I know we're getting parochial here, but I do represent East Bergholt, it talks about outstanding planning permissions 12, where we know that at the moment there are 155 with planning permission and 75 coming up for outline permission to be discussed on reserve matters. So that it makes a bit of a mockery of a figure of 12 and makes the 241, which is the total homes required, already met.
Okay, it is quite parochial, so you'll have to forgive me. I'm actually searching through a paper copy to find East Bergholt now. Are you satisfied?
Page 45.
Sorry?
Page 45, he said.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about I was going to ask you, are you satisfied that the sites indicated for East Bergholt, I was looking for that page, are you satisfied that they're properly marked?
I would say yes, that they are properly marked. I wouldn't say that I agree with them, but I would say that they are properly marked based on the permissions that have been, or the planning applications that have been put in to date.
Okay, and the number that you're looking at for East Bergholt, the identified permissions at that point for that piece of work was the 1st of April 2018 for those figures. And you're saying that 12 at that moment in time you don't think was right, or you're saying what a shame that moment in time was so long ago?
The latter. because in actual fact, when you look at every single page on this document, it's at the bottom, it says joint local plan pre-submission November 2020.
Oh,
so to then be using April.
Yeah, but I think you have to accept. I mean, Rob, of course, is a lot more of an expert on the preparation of local plans than I am. But I think you have to accept, don't you, Councillor Hinton, that for different elements of the plan and its evidence base, you have to put a mark down in terms of time. And that's the point that you work from. Otherwise, you'll never get to a point of publishing a plan because you're having to update it all the time.
Thank you. I think we'll move on now. I have one final question. I hope it's a question from Councillor Parker. And then after we've had Councillor Parker's question, we'll move on to debate. Councillor Parker, have you got a question, please?
I have, Madam Chair, and I'll be brief about it as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Councillor Arthey, question for you. It's been pointed out to me by a local clerk that we are inviting representation for this proposal, and it's a proposal that I support wholeheartedly since I'm talking about it. But it's been pointed out to me that we're asking for representation on this between the 12th of November and the 24th of December, which is precisely the time that parish councils won't be meeting. And indeed, I'm cognizant of the fact that there are still a number of parish councils that haven't been able to meet throughout this year. So could you give me an assurance that this proposal will be really well advertised so that those out in our communities are fully aware of their obligations and are able to put their representations forward? Thank you.
Yes, it will be. But more than that, I would say that if you're talking about parish councils, there should be very little in this document that comes as a complete surprise, because it's based on the work that we've done over a number of years. A lot of parish councils will have engaged in the process in 2017 and again in 2019, and with the exception maybe of a few sites, and we spoke about the Sproughton one earlier on, I don't think that there is anything in here that will come or should come as a complete surprise to any of the parishes. So yes, it will be publicised. Yes, we will be engaging with parish councils. I said that in my introduction. And as far as the 6-week period is concerned, I don't think that should be a problem. It tends to be that if we give people 6 weeks, they respond in the last week of the 6. If we give them 12 weeks, they respond in the last week of the 12. If we gave them 2 years, they'd probably respond in the last week of the 2 years. So I don't think for anybody that's interested in what this plan means to their community, what it means to the future of their residents, I don't think that anybody should fail to engage if they want to.
Thank you. So now I'll open the floor to debate. Would anyone like to open the debate? Councillor Busby, would you like to start the debate, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Picking up on Councillor Hardacre's point, his wasn't an isolated incident where we've had an application which has been turned down, but is still in the plan, whereas one of the parishes have got a neighbourhood plan with an alternative site in it. I understand there's quite a few in Mid-Suffolk as well. The concern about this is that there will be quite a lot of representation that goes to the inspector, and we could see quite a few changes to the plan, which is a shame. But this is the problem that you get when a plan takes so long to prepare, I guess. It'll never be perfect at any one point in time, but it does seem a shame that we haven't taken perhaps more notice of what villages and parishes want in their neighbourhood plans, rather than perhaps what developers or what we think is the best site. from my point of view, it should be a plan that's delivered bottom up rather than top down. If it was delivered bottom up, you wouldn't have a lot of these problems. One of the other points that disappoints me is that when we talk about employment, in the plan we say that we'll be focusing on town centres for retail and employment. And we've long tried to promote our town centres as much as we can. Yet if we look at the allocations, we have about 4,200 houses allocated for southwest Ipswich area. That's going round from Claydon through to Worsted, 4,200. Yet in Hadley and Needham Market, there's only about 700. So we're putting in 6 times the number of houses which will support Ipswich as opposed to our own market town centres. Are we trying to create a greater Ipswich area? Because that appears to be what the plan is destined to do.
There were lots of questions in there. I think I don't know if they were debate points, and I didn't make a note of all of them, I don't think. But as far as Ipswich Fringe is concerned, I mean, I would refer you back again to our previous consultation work in 2017 and 19, and we asked the question, and the answer came back that we should be looking at urban extension, we should be looking at our market towns. If you remember, there were options in there for a new settlement to provide the level of growth that we had to accommodate, and that didn't gather universal support. So we have talked about the options. On page 44, there's a table on page 44 that gives you the percentages. And I think that reads 21% of development would go towards settlements in the Ipswich Fringe, 33% to market towns and urban areas, 28% to core villages, and then we've got 9% hinterland villages and 4% to hamlets. And I think those figures leave 5% for windfall development spread across the hierarchy. So I hear the point you're making, but I don't think in any way it makes our plan inappropriate. The first question you asked, I'm afraid I should have written down what it was, but I didn't. So can you just run past me again what the first part of your point was, Councillor?
May I just intervene here? This really is, now we're moving on to the debate rather than more question and answer period. I think you've had your period of answering questions. So I think now we're moving on to debate, councillors.
I agree. That's why I didn't ask this in the questions thing. It was just a statement to say that the example that Councillor Hardacre had used wasn't an isolated incident.
Yeah.
We've had a number of parishes where developments have been turned down, yet they now appear in the plan, whereas the villages have got alternative sites in their neighbourhood plans which don't appear in the plan, making their neighbourhood plans not acceptable. So we're likely to get a lot of representation, is my point. And it could mean that we have to make a lot of changes to the JLP, which will be a shame.
Thank you for those observations, Councillor Busby. We'll now move on to Councillor Norman.
Thank you very much. I'm Madam Chairman. I'm not going to repeat too much of what Councillor Hardacre and what Councillor Busby have mentioned already, because it is on that point. I would just like to sort of state my case just for the security, because I know that residents will be watching this and I just want to assure them of what I just want to say. So I won't be long and I don't need a response to what I'm about to say. But I'd just like to say, obviously, as a district councillor, I am going to support the joint local plan because it is in the best interest of the district. However, I would just like to voice the concerns of for the people in my ward, just because the controversy does come from this allocation on the Rainway, where the land has been refused twice by the planning committee and is currently under appeal. Obviously, as we all know, and has been mentioned previously, This application the decision of the planning committee is being defended by Babergh, but equally it has been put into the joint local plan as it wasn't before. So I do think that's odd, and obviously Councillor Arthey, I do thank you as well for your explanation. You have answered a lot of the questions that I was going to mention, which is why I didn't put this in the question part. Equally, this site does have many issues that have already been identified, such as the heritage issues and the environmental issues, which is why it was refused in the first place. Obviously, what I will do now is continue to work with officers as I have done. I've spoken to Tom Barker about this. So this is an ongoing discussion that isn't really for today, but I just wanted to express, obviously, there is concern about this site, and I will be bringing this up as further as the joint local plan is a live document as well. So not everything, from the discussions today, I didn't want to bring it up too much because I know it's not really of the hour, but I just wanted to assure residents that with this specific site, obviously, we know that we're not happy about it in our ward. I'm not happy about it, and Councillor Hardacre has mentioned his concerns as well. So I'll be making those a case to the officers about that. But for now, I just wanted to, assure my residents that I'm doing everything I can on that regard. But in terms of the joint local plan, for the best of the district, I will be supporting it today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Norman. Councillor Carpendale. Thank you, Madam Chair. I feel I've got to say something about this because I've expressed my reservations about aspects of the plan on various occasions. On the other hand, I do recognise the need for a valid plan, one that's up to date, and there are lots of positives in this one. But my principal concern, I think it's really been hinted at already by other speakers, and that's really this area southwest of Ipswich. It won't come to a surprise as a surprise to people because I've mentioned this several times before. We've got several sites in this area for hundreds of homes, all of which are going to generate journey to work traffic on roads that are already congested. There's precious little employment in these villages along the A12. So they're all going to be heading off to Ipswich, Colchester, London, wherever. And the A12 corridor may well be a strategic route, but even we dismiss the nightmare of Copdock. We've got these junctions on and off it all the way down to the Essex border, and they're dangerously substandard and inadequate. Councillor Hinton mentioned something that we were told many years ago, and it just seems to have disappeared into a black hole at the moment. What is going to happen to these junctions? Because the additional traffic is going to put enormous pressure on them, and they really are very dangerous. I think when you consider the planned development on the Ipswich Fringe as well, the overall traffic levels really don't bear thinking about. If we are stuck with all these houses on this corridor, then we really need to see some kind of a plan for how it's all going to work. How is it actually going to function? My own ward is particularly burdened with the prospect of 70% growth, but there's no vision for the settlement as a whole. And I don't know if that applies to other core villages that are going to have a lot of development. We do seem to have an awful lot coming our way. There's certainly no buy-in from the village, which means that any neighbourhood plan is going to struggle to get through its referendum. I mean, obviously, it's vital that we do have a plan. I do accept that. I'm very torn as to whether I can actually support this plan and vote for it. I recognise the need for it, but I really do have reservations. And I dare say that along with my parish council and other residents, we'll make some further representations during the next 6 weeks. So I have yet to make up my mind if I vote for it or if I don't. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Carpendale. Councillor Fraser.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Councillor Fraser, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Sorry, just a bit of a lag there. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I think in reflection with what has been said by many councillors, I welcome the joint local plan as a district councillor. representing Hadley South, we are looking at several hundred houses within this local plan, and I think the key concern for residents in Hadley is infrastructure, and primarily our southern access. And really, we need very much in Hadley a southern relief road to bypass the B1070. And so certainly it's important, and whilst I remain a councillor, I'll be working hard with councillors at district level and at county level to ensure that this strategic look forward on improving this access goes ahead if we are to support the building of such a large number of houses. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fraser. Councillor McCraw.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to support this, I suspect. And I have several reasons for this. First of all, it replaces the existing core strategy. And I think we've all seen the problems that we've had with that in terms of conflict and in terms of the length of time preparation and how we felt the consultation exercises went there. It has many flaws, not least of which one of it might be my own very involvement in the council at this level. I suspect without the core strategy, I might never have been here. So that's another charge to lay at its doorstep. Consultation exercises here, though, have been as extensive as any I've ever seen. That wasn't the case before. There's been a solid parish response, as Councillor Arthey referred to in his initial introduction. Member involvement, I was involved at a previous stage, and I'm really happy to see the work of the Members' Working Party throughout that. They should be thanked, by the way, for that. And in fact, all officers should be thanked, because I know how difficult this job has been as I've been involved in discussions throughout. Not everybody's going to get what they want here. We have to comply, after all, with the NPPF, and I think many of us have issues with the content of the NPPF, and particularly NPPF 2. But this must be passed to the inspectorate. We must vote for this, in my opinion. We're going to have to look to benefit from any transitional arrangements that might apply before the government impose a new calculation method which would see our housing targets more than double, and the council have made a good response to that. And we must also be ready to deal with what might emerge from the white paper proposals. We must get ready before those can take effect. It's essential that we pass this joint local plan, so I shall be voting for it.
Thank you, Councillor McCraw. Now, I'm aware that Councillor Ward wants to exercise his right to speak, but does anyone else want to come in on the debate before we move to closing this and bring in Councillor Ward? Oh, Councillor Osborne, Councillor Adrian Osborne, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I'd like to express my opinions on the local plan. I think we were long overdue to have a good local plan. As Councillor Arthey has said, it's one of the best ones that I have witnessed since I've been on council. But the one trigger for it all, and it's been hit on the head many times. I think Councillor Carpendale made that point, and I have the same one, and that is about the infrastructure. If we are going to make areas such as our market town here in Sudbury good, then they need to have good infrastructure around it. We've already got a lot of housing coming up and around us, and one of the main concerns of our residents is the amount of traffic that will once again come into Sudbury. So I'm afraid I just hope that we can get the issues of infrastructure sorted out with Suffolk County Council or the Highways England. It is needed, no doubt about it, and it's just not our area. I recognise the fact that it's in a lot of other areas. So I will support this because it is a good local plan, and I very much condone that the work that has been done by our officers and the joint working group that came in with it. And thanks again to Clive Arthey for an excellent presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Councillor Lindsay.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I guess as kind of leader of the Green Group, I ought to. Well, it's really my view. I can't speak for my group, and they, as always, they vote on their own conscience. We don't have a whip in our group, but I think it's worth saying that I feel deeply conflicted by this, and I'm sort of teetering which way to go, because I accept that we need it, because if we don't have it, we'll have sort of virtually no protection against development, and it's something that's forced on us by the government. But I just feel this is at the time when we declared a climate emergency. This plan is going to significantly add to carbon emissions, even if the government get around to insisting on zero carbon homes. This could be building houses. It'll take them some time, and there'll be extra carbon, as several people have pointed out. Many of these greenfield developments will simply put more cars on the road. The idea that they're sustainable is frankly laughable in a lot of cases. People will not be, we're not building houses that are car free, but we're building houses that are car dependent. And that's going to be the single biggest contributor to carbon emissions in this county. All these new homes that we're building. And furthermore, they're private homes built for profit. They do not meet local need. There is not a need for all these homes. So for all those reasons, I don't particularly like the local plan, but I accept that I may have to vote for it with gritted teeth. Thank you.
Thank you for your views, Councillor Lindsay. Councillor Malvisi.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to challenge Councillor Lindsay's claim that this local plan will increase emissions. We've worked very hard to produce a climate change action plan, and yesterday we passed the biodiversity action plan, and the two combined will work very hard at reducing the overall emissions. The next thing obviously will be the design guide, and that too will reduce emissions. So I'm very supportive of the joint local plan. We need it. We have to move forward. We can't stand still, and we certainly don't want to go back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Malvisi. Would anyone else like to speak before I return to Councillor Ward? So, Councillor Ward, would you like to exercise your right to speak, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would. And just quickly before I go into what I was intending to say, I do disagree with Councillor Lindsay. These houses are needed. Try telling to young families looking for homes to live in to bring up their families that there's no need, and you'll see that that's not true. Councillors Hinton and Carpendale have talked about the A12. This is one of two trunk roads in our district. There are huge pressures on this road, and we must keep up the pressure on Highways England, who seem to be giving us mixed messages. I know the infrastructure delivery plan at IDP 090 talks about Junction 32 at Capel St Mary, but there's nothing about Junction 31, the Four Sisters, and we've got to make sure that we get something in it to recognise the pressures on that particular junction. Anyway, just to go on to what I wanted to say, I am very pleased to second the recommendations in this paper. As you have heard, it is the culmination of several years of detailed work by our dedicated planning policy team and a cross-party working group of members of both councils. I thank all of them for that. It is an excellent document and will give us a robust and detailed framework for future development in the district. And now I know many of us may have specific concerns about individual sections, particularly the site allocations, as you have heard, but it is a living document and any issues can be addressed in future revisions so that individual reservations we may have can be assuaged. It is perfectly possible to support the plan because of the district level benefits of having one, while still object to specific allocations. The important thing is that it is our plan. It belongs to all 32 of us. Indeed, it belongs to all 66 members of both councils. It has been agreed by our representatives on the working group and includes ideas and desires from all political groups. It is essential that we proceed and submit this local plan for inspection. We need it, not just because, as Councillor McCraw has alluded, our existing plan is becoming out of date with policies that are often challenged and because it is based on obsolete housing targets, but also because the planning landscape is likely to change drastically in the near future following publication of the white paper and the proposed changes to the current planning system. We therefore need a local plan that is defensible during this period of change. There is no reason for any of us not to support this local plan. The broad principles and the policies are sound and are what we have said we want. The alternative would be having no plan and the consequences that would have for inappropriate development. Our communities would not thank any of us for that. I shall be voting to approve the Joint Local Plan Regulation 19 document this evening, and I look forward to following its progress through the examination process. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Councillor Arthey, would you like to sum up and make any comments?
I will. It'll be very quick. I've heard what everybody has said in the debate, and I would simply say we can't be without a fully compliant, up-to-date plan. We won't have a fully adopted plan until later on next year, but we will now have a document that carries some weight. So it is a material planning consideration in the determination of applications. I've heard what people have said about the examination next year, and I'm sure there will be some changes as a result of that. I don't believe there will be very many significant changes to our plan because I believe it's a very good plan. I think that I've heard what people have said about infrastructure. Obviously, we've got an infrastructure paper about SIL coming up next. And I would only say that we've had SIL since, or we've been charging SIL since 2016. When it comes to the provision of infrastructure, never mind the other infrastructure providers, remember that we will be a key player in funding infrastructure requirements. We've collected a significant amount of money through Community Infrastructure Levy, and we will be part of the provision of the infrastructure that communities need moving forward. We won't be providing all of it, of course, but we will be a big player in the provision of the infrastructure that most of you have identified in your communities as being deficient. So we can be a part of that. Chairman, lastly, I just wanted to confirm the recommendations. They're in the paper. Did you want me to read them or did you want to read them?
Don't worry, I'll read those in a moment. If you finish your summing up, I'll read the recommendations. Thank you.
I have, thank you, Chairman. I urge members to support the submission of the plan for examination next year.
Thank you, Councillor Arthey. So yes, for clarity and to enable viewers watching this meeting on YouTube, and anyone who may not have had the opportunity to see the recommendations, I will now read the recommendations that we are about to vote on. So the recommendations are 3.1, that the Babergh and Mid-Suffolk Joint Local Plan, pre-submission, Regulation 19, document November 2020, Appendix A, be approved for publication under Regulation 19 of the Town and Planning Act, Local Planning, England, Regulations 2012, as amended. Point 2, 3.2, that delegated authority is given to the Assistant Director for Sustainable Communities in consultation with a Cabinet Member for Planning to submit the Joint Local Plan pre-submission Regulation 19 document to the Secretary of State for an independent examination and for modification and procedural processes necessary for the examination. 3.3. That the addendum to the Statement of Community Involvement, November 2020, Appendix E, be approved. So those are the recommendations. The Corporate Manager, Governance and Civic Office will now take a roll call vote on the proposal.
Thank you, Chair. Members, please can you respond with for, against or abstain? Councillor Arthey.
For.
Councillor Ayres.
For.
Councillor Barrett.
For.
Councillor Beer.
For.
Councillor Busby.
For.
Councillor Carpendale.
Reluctantly for.
Councillor Creswell.
For.
Councillor Davis.
For.
Councillor Fraser.
For.
Councillor Gould.
For.
Councillor Grandon.
For.
Councillor Hardacre.
Reluctant for.
Councillor Hinton.
Reluctant against.
Councillor Jameson.
For.
Councillor Lindsay.
For.
Councillor Malvisi.
For.
Councillor McCraw. Councillor McCraw. I'll come back to Councillor McCraw. Councillor McLaren.
For.
Councillor Newman.
For.
Councillor Norman.
For.
Councillor Nunn.
For.
Councillor Adrian Osborne.
For.
Councillor Jan Osborne.
For.
Councillor Owen.
For.
Councillor Parker.
For.
Councillor Plum.
For.
Councillor Ward.
For.
Councillor McCraw, are you with us?
I am indeed. My apologies. I was temporarily ejected. For.
Okay, thank you. Chair, that is carried.
The vote was carried. Thank you. So we'll now move on to item 4 on our agenda today. BC 29, Community Infrastructure Levy, SIL, proposed revised SIL charging rates for consultation purposes for Babergh District Council and Mid Suffolk District Council as SIL charging authorities for their administrative areas. I would like to invite Councillor Arthey to introduce paper BC 29 and to move the recommendations in the report. Councillor Arthey.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, having lost my screen for my previous introduction, I've taken the precaution of printing off what I'm going to say so that you won't have, or I won't have the embarrassment of having nothing to present. Thank you, Chairman. Babergh is a SIL charging authority. This was formally agreed in January 2016 when the SIL charging scheme was adopted. The SIL charging rates were agreed following viability testing and charging started on the 11th of April 2016. It was made clear at the time that rates were likely to remain for at least 3 years. Given the current position reached with our joint local plan, it is considered appropriate to formally review the SIL charging rates for both Babergh and Mid Suffolk. You will also be aware of the infrastructure funding statement that was considered by Cabinet yesterday. The existing SIL rates are at Appendix I, but they are subject to indexation. So the latest indexed rates shown at paragraph 4.5 represent our current charges. The original instalments policy is at Appendix C. Following an assessment of whole plan viability and potential SIL rates based on infrastructure needs, planning policy requirements, and housing development market conditions, our viability consultant has recommended changes to the existing SIL rates. The revised rates represent an increase for greenfield residential development, but the evidence provided by our viability consultant is that they are reasonable. The new rates distinguish between greenfield and brownfield sites and sites where there is an affordable housing requirement, but are a flat rate in place of the existing high and low charging zones. The viability consultants also concluded there is no longer a requirement to consider any sites as having strategic status. This simplifies the schedule further so that all undeveloped sites without planning permissions will be SIL chargeable. The SIL member panel has had several meetings to formulate the proposals for the revised SIL charging rates in Appendix A. And we're also keen to compare our rates with those of other SIL charging authorities. These are included at Appendix M. Whilst our rates must rely on viability evidence, we were reassured to find the proposed rates were comparable with other charging authorities. Proposed revisions to the instalment policy are in Appendix N. It seemed reasonable to review the instalment policy at the same time as the rates review. The member panel supported a simplified instalment policy which considered the needs of the house builders, particularly the smaller ones, and the parishes who need to plan for SIL receipts to support community infrastructure delivery. Your approval is sought for a 6-week consultation on the proposed revisions to run from the 12th of November to the 24th of December, the same period as agreed for representations on the local plan. Details and consultees are set out at paragraph 9.1 of BC 29. Chairman, I'm proposing the recommendations in paragraphs 3.1 and 3.2 of our report, which are for these proposals to be subject to a 6-week consultation, with the responses being considered by our viability consultants and fed back into the examination in public. We will then consider the inspector's report before adoption on a date to be agreed. The recommendations are worded for both Babergh and Mid Suffolk, but my proposal relates just to us. So please replace the both councils bit at the start of each recommendation with Babergh District Council. On behalf of the member group, I would like to thank Christine Thurlow and her team for all their hard work and the detailed analysis to bring this to you today. Christine is with us this evening, as is Stuart Cook from our viability consultants, to answer any detailed questions you may have. I'm proposing 3.1 and 3.2 of BC 29 as amended and ask for a seconder. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Arthey. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'd be happy to second this as well, Madam Chairman. Councillor Ward here.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. So we'll now move on to questions and debate. Councillors are asked to comment on the proposed response and if there are any amendments to this response. Councillors may ask as many questions as they wish, however, but they must be relevant to the subject excuse me, under discussion and must be a question. When we move to debate, councillors will only be asked to speak once, be able to speak once for 3 minutes, and this will be timed. So we'll move on to questions now. Do I have any questions, please, regarding this paper? Would anyone like to start the questions? Councillor Hinton, would you like to open the questions, please?
Just a quick question, please, Madam Chairman. It's more of a point of clarification as much as anything else. Am I correct in thinking that, having read these papers as well, that we're now going away from a 2-tier SIL structure to a single tier structure, so that the villages like mine don't get penalised over the towns in terms of how much SIL they pay?
Yes, the new proposals don't have zoning any longer.
Thank you. That was a nice, simple answer. Councillor McCraw, you have a question.
I think for brevity, I'd just like for Councillor Arthey, if he could confirm that this, in fact, is the only decision we are making here today, is to send this document out for consultation. The consultees will have their chances to put their input into that, and then it will be brought back to council for a final decision. So that's the only decision we're making, to send the document out for consultation. And if that's the case, is that correct?
Could you clarify, Councillor Arthey, please?
Yes, that is correct. Just to add that the proposals are coming from the member group who've worked on all of the SIL revisions and are working on the framework review, which will be coming soon. So yes, it's the suggested review, the suggested revisions, and they will go out to consultation.
Thank you, Councillor.
Okay.
Thank you. Are there any more questions before we move on to debate? So there do not appear to be any further questions. So may I invite you to start the debate, please? Councillor Busby, would you like to open the debate?
Thank you. Yes. I'm surprised Clive didn't start by saying that he was following scientific evidence, that we've studied what we need to spend and have therefore increased our income accordingly, which is fine, except we're doubling the rates almost. And that's a concern to me. When we've got house prices that are already in excess of what most people can afford, to add another £10,000–20,000 onto the cost of each house seems a little short-sighted. I know Mr. Arthey will likely to say that it should drive down land prices, and I hope it does. But much of the land has already been bought for housing to go up in the future, in the near future at least. So I'm really concerned that we're not just inflating house prices by doubling our SIL rates.
Councillor Hinton, would you like to join the debate?
It's playing up. Gotcha. Yes, I agree with what Councillor Busby said, but I would also say that there is two good points within this document, and they are, one, the taking away of the zoning, because it was penalising the villages and making them effectively more unaffordable than they were before. But the good thing is the fact that we're now tiering the rates, the payment of the SIL a bit more, because I've had developers say to me that one of the crippling things about and is holding them back from new developments is the fact that they have to pay the SIL, all of it up front, before they've even started, and that the smaller developers that do not have access to the funding from banks that everybody else seems to get taken for granted, probably because they don't want to borrow quite so much as the big developers do. So there are benefits to this scheme, and I hope that they will be highlighted when it goes out for consultation, and that the public will have a chance to comment on them.
Thank you, Councillor Hinton. Councillor Carpendale.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I firstly thank the working group for the time they put in on this, and also to Christine Thurlow and her team. They've done a lot of work, and Christine's also given me the benefit of her explanation and rationale for the proposed increases that we're looking at. I can see that our SIL charges are comparable. In fact, they're quite low, or they have been. But I'm a little bit on the same track as Councillor Busby, because I do wonder about the impact on house prices compared to the earnings that we have in Babergh. We're already at 11 to 1 as a ratio, which is pretty high. And that does just worry me a bit, because it then puts us into all sorts of dangerous positions with regard to build out and meeting our targets for build and so on. Having said that, I can see that clearly if we're going to need all this infrastructure, we're going to need the money from somewhere. So I shall certainly support this, but I do have concerns about the impact on our house price and earnings ratio.
Thank you, Councillor Carpendale. Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm a member of the SIL review panel, and a lot of work has gone into the conclusions that we've got before us today. But I want to pay tribute to Clive and David Byrne for their supervision, if you like, and wealth of knowledge. But most of all to Christine Thurlow and her team. They've done a magnificent job and they work very hard, and well done to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. Councillor Ward.
Yes, just a comment on the potential impact on house prices. I think house prices are more controlled by the supply and demand issue than the potential for SIL to inflate prices. At least that's what the standard method for calculating our housing number is predicated on. And I'm sure that's the case. If we build houses, more houses, then the price will be well, not so much come down, but will be pegged at a level that people can afford, hopefully. I'm more I suppose encouraged by paragraph 1.9 in this particular report here, which says that these new proposed rates have gone through significant viability testing, and that demonstrates that the rates of SIL, these new rates of SIL, would not render any development sites as undeliverable. So I'm satisfied that, and also as Councillor Carpendale, I think, has mentioned, our rates are quite favourable compared with others. I'm more than happy to be satisfied that these new proposed rates are going to be achievable and will not have a detrimental impact on development in the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. I will just mention that that is your only opportunity to speak on this.
Yes, that's all I wanted to say. Yeah.
Fine, thank you. Councillor Busby.
Yeah. Sorry, just very quickly, just to say that we are supposed to be building houses for locals, and we might be building houses for Londoners. That's my only concern.
Councillor. Councillor McCraw.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not too sure about bringing regionality into it, Councillor Busby, because in all honesty, I mean, there was a time when I didn't live in this area, and I have many friends who've moved to this area from that very place you talk of. I think at the time we've been talking so much about the requirements of infrastructure that actually looking as we plan to look at our principal vehicle for providing local infrastructure is exactly what we should be doing. And if there are any reservations, any problems, well, I'm sure they're going to emerge during the consultation process. Everybody will have their chance to make their point, and then at that point the council will then be able to take that evidence, the working party will be able to put something together and bring this back to council. So I believe, in all honesty, we should just vote for this straight away.
I think we may be about to do that. But before we do that, is there anyone else who would like to make a point in this debate? Oh, Councillor Fraser.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I'm being a Londoner and moving here to Suffolk. I was quite surprised at Councillor Busby's remark just then, and I think he should withdraw it. Thank you.
Do you not agree that we should be building houses for locals?
We should be building houses for everyone and those that
we're
need
not here.
them.
So I think we'll now refrain from that kind of debate. So, Councillor Arthey, would you like to sum up?
Again, my summing up would be very brief. I just wondered, though, that there have been a few comments about viability, comments about how some house builders will have already bought sites and they're going to be surprised by the increase in the rates. This work was underpinned by a viability assessment, and we've got with us the consultant who did that. I mean, would it be okay for Stuart Cook just to address that point on sustainability? Sorry, viability, not sustainability. We've lost you, Chairman.
Sorry, I had a few technical issues.
It's okay. I had some of those earlier on. I lost my papers.
I think they're resolved.
Okay. The question was, before I sum up, would it be okay just to ask our viability consultant, Stuart Cook, just to address that issue of viability that a few members spoke about?
Yes, please do. Thank you.
That's if he's still with us, Stuart.
Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah. Yeah, just to set out in terms of our viability assessment, it has had regard to best practice set out in planning practice guidance, and in the PPG, it's clear that all development costs do have to come off of land value. So and that's just a very clear method, and so developers should be aware not to be overbidding for sites or using that as an excuse not to be paying for policy and this enhanced civil charge which is proposed. In terms of the actual viability assessment itself, when we were looking to set a new rate, the actual assessment considered current sales values. So they're based upon current prices achieved in the market. So it's not sort of looking forward and trying to inflate values to accommodate a new civil charge. And furthermore, when we set the proposed civil charges itself, we've allowed for what they call a viability buffer to absorb any changes in the market. And based upon our testing, we think that the values could probably, the proposed civil rates could absorb sort of between maybe 5 or 10% fall within values as well. So there's a number of buffers built into the exercise as well to withstand change in the market. So we're not pushing the rates at the margins of viability. That they're very much affordable and represent enhanced rate as well.
Okay, thanks for that, Stuart. So the only thing that I would add to that before I sum up really is that if there's anything that we do know about the development and house building industry, it's that they do like certainty. The previous regime before SIL, with 106 contributions, there was no certainty. There was certainty there was going to be something, but there wasn't certainty about how much it would be because that had to be negotiated after the grant. That, of course, is later on in the process. The SIL charging regime is known up front, so that's why it should impact on land values. So, Chairman, I think on the last item you wished to read out the recommendations that I'm proposing.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. Yes.
Yep. Okay, thank you very much. And again, I'd urge members to support the proposals, and they are, as Councillor McCraw said, they are for a period of consultation and reassessment.
Thank you, Councillor Arthey. So yes, as before, I'll read out the recommendations for clarity and to enable those who do not have the words in front of them to be aware of them. So the recommendations are as follows, and this is what we will be voting on. 3.1. that Babergh District Council approve the content of this report and all appendices with a view to agreeing that this material will be the subject of a formal consultation for a period of 6 weeks between the 12th November and 24th December 2020. This would be a separate consultation, but run in parallel with the consultation exercise for the emerging joint local plan. 3.2. That Babergh District Council agree that all responses to the consultation relating to revisions to the rates of sill charging will be considered, analysed by the Council's viability consultants and taken into account and fed into an examination in public to be held by an inspector. Babergh District Council also agree to fully consider the inspector's report when the examination in public is concluded, together with any consequent inspector's report issued with his or her findings to both councils. This would allow both councils to consider outcomes together with any revision and subsequent adoption of any new revised sill charging rates for both councils, together with an implementation date. Now, I'm aware that quite a few councillors have had to leave the meeting to go to other parish and town council meetings, but we will now have a vote. So I invite the Corporate Manager, Governance and Civic Office to take a roll call vote on the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members, please can you respond with for, against or abstain? Councillor Arthey.
For.
Councillor Barrett.
For.
Councillor Beer.
For.
Councillor Busby.
For.
Councillor Carpendale.
For.
Councillor Davis.
For.
Councillor Fraser.
For.
Councillor Gould.
For.
Councillor Grandon.
For.
Councillor Hardacre.
For.
Councillor Malvisi.
For.
Councillor McCraw.
For.
Councillor McLaren.
For.
Councillor Newman.
For.
Councillor Norman.
For.
Councillor Nunn.
For.
Councillor Adrian Osborne.
For.
Councillor Jan Osborne.
For.
Councillor Parker.
For.
Councillor Ward.
For.
Chair, that is carried unanimously.
Thank you. That vote was carried unanimously. So thank you very much for everyone's hard work on the papers tonight and for the presentation. That vote is carried, and thank you all for attending this evening. Our next meeting is on the 24th of November at 5:30. But now I think we can call this evening's meeting closed. Thank you very much. At 7:42, our meeting this evening is closed. Thank you all very much for attending.